Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay Hae podcast. And today I'm joined by screenwriter, playwright, actor, and novelist Linda Duncan McLaughlin. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Ali. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks. And we're here to talk mostly about your debut novel, Original Sins. I've got my copy here, which is published by Into Books, but I'm sure we'll touch on a whole lot more. But first of all, I was interested in how you describe Original Sins to people, because I find it's quite a difficult novel to describe.
It sits probably unevenly between genre, because I think it's a kind of like psychological family drama thriller because there's lots of all of that in it. There is obviously it was nominated for the Crime Writers Association debut dagger. But I didn't initially see it as a crime novel. But there are crimes, but they happen mostly before the story starts. Although there is crime in it as well. But yeah, if I were pushed to put it into a sort of recognisable genre, I'd probably go for psychological thriller. Yeah.
I actually think it makes it all the more interesting. The fact that it doesn't fit easily into place. And at its heart, you've got this central character who feels that they don't belong and who wants to try and discover why they feel that way about the family. What inspired the story?
Well, I write a lot. A lot of my writing's about identity and people who don't know who they are and why they are the way they are, and belongingness and family. But this one, the starting point for this one was actually because one of my best friends adopted a little girl from Cambodia.
Oh, wow.
Now we're talking 22 years ago. So that's how long this novel has been germinating, if you like. And we talked a lot about how she would feel once she was old enough to understand where she was from and what her background was. And my friend, when she went out to pick her up in Cambodia, employed a detective to try and find, any information she could about her birth mum and birth dad, because she was left at an orphanage basically, and she couldn't find anything at all. And we wondered what that would be like to have, in a way, we're not. If you come from a conventional family, you're not really aware of the fact that you have backstory, but your mum and dad or whoever, your family tell you stories about your family, so you have all this background. But if you don't have that, it kind of, I come from quite a sprawling family myself. My mum had 5 sisters and a brother. And I can see myself in lots of my aunties, particularly, in fact, I look quite like a lot of my aunties. So in the family traits, you can see, when we're all together in one place, you can see that people are like each other. But if you don't have that, how does that make you feel? There's a lack somewhere.
Yeah.
And some adopted people don't feel that, and that's amazing. But I did quite a lot of research on adopted people and the people that had written about it, and a lot of them say that there is this lack, and they do feel the urge to go looking to find the people that gave them life, if you like, and gave them their story.
That's really interesting because your novel, you got the central character of Joanne Marshall, who's almost, well, she is encouraged not to go looking.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's what the family are saying.
Yeah. They're very much, her adoptive family are very much against it. And she doesn't know why. She finds out why when she does dig. But initially, because she's never felt connected. I think that's one of the things that, again, I found a lot of people who wrote about being adopted, they feel a lack of connection sometimes, and a lack of, is it trust? Yeah. Being able to believe that people are like totally will take them in because that very first, what sometimes is seen as rejection.
Yeah. And you've got an imagined other experience that you don't have any knowledge of.
Yes, and Joanne in the novel goes through this like swinging wildly from, oh, I'll find them and it'll be so wonderful to see them and they'll be so glad to see me, to the door will be shut in my face, no one will want to talk to me. It's like, I watched a lot of what's the show in the telly, Long Lost Family.
Yeah.
Lots of, and those are all usually happy stories, but there are stories out there that are not so happy. They don't have such happy endings, so.
So, I mean, you mentioned the inspiration for it, but the book isn't that story.
No.
It's a really different story. How did you begin to give Joanne the backstory that you have? Because it's a complex one.
It is very complex, and when I started to think about it, I mean, like Joanne's story was the first one, but at the same time, I was doing an MLit at Glasgow University, and we had to put together a portfolio piece at the end, which is a major piece of work. And I had originally thought about maybe doing a series of linked short stories, and I was working on one, and I didn't know when I first started on it that those two stories in particular were talking to each other. I didn't know that they were linked so closely. But as I started to develop them, I realised that I had the story of Mary and James, who are, Joanne's parents, and Joanne's story. They were completely separate. So they're in different time frames, for one thing.
Yeah.
But I gradually realised that they were very closely linked, and I abandoned the idea of doing all the other stories and just focused in on them. And like James in particular, well, all of them, not so much Mary, but both Joanne and James talked. That I'm a playwright as well, and an actor, and what happens when you're an actor is you're thinking about character. Obviously, that's where it starts from. You think about character. So when I first started writing, characters talked. They would do monologues in my head, and that's where both James and Joanne started like that. And and James in particular, his story became a big influence on Joanne's.
Because, I mean, the characters are so vivid that you cannot, well, I could almost picture them, and where they were and how they were. Did you have those pictures in your head? Did you kind of create almost tangible characters?
Right, I'm one of these weird people that doesn't see visual pictures. There's
Right,
that
okay.
syndrome, you don't see it. Like if someone asks me to meditate and visualize a candle, I can't do it. I can't see the picture in my head. So technically, no.
Right.
But I did look at pictures of, like pictures of people, and think, does that look like Joanne? Does that look like James? So in a way, it's good because if it ever does become a screenplay, I won't be dictating what they look like.
But that's interesting because you do write for screen and you do write for stage.
Uh-huh.
So how do you then create the characters for those visual kind of areas?
Well, obviously they're different. Stage is much more text based anyway. It's about character, really, Ali. It's about the inside of them.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes, of course, you write a play or whatever, and it's cast, and you think, absolutely, that's absolutely how she looks.
Yeah.
But as long as an actor is good enough, then in a way you would say that, you would go, yeah, that's so and so, that's definitely him, that's definitely her.
Oh, that is so interesting. I didn't think about that at all. But in a way, it means if it was to become, a screenplay and go and say, you're not coming with any preconceptions. It would
No.
just be the quality of the person acting rather than thinking, oh,
It's
that doesn't fit my imagination.
do they get the character? I mean, my play, most well-known play, Descent, had 3 different iterations, different productions, and it was a different actor who played the main male character each time, and they're very different physically, but they all did a brilliant job in slightly different ways.
Yeah. It leads me to ask, was this always going to be a novel? Did you think that this might be for something else?
Well, yes, it was always a novel.
Right.
Because I'm a screenwriter, I can't resist, like adapting it, And of course, if it ever did get picked up, then I would hope I would get the chance to adapt it. I know because I mean, like I'm obviously I've been working as a screenwriter for a few years, but I'm not a name screenwriter, and this happens sometimes with books that get adapted into screenplays. There are quite famous examples of ones where even though the writer may also be a screenwriter, they're not allowed to adapt it.
Right.
They'll bring in someone else, and to some extent you understand why, because you're so close to it.
Yeah.
You can't see it as an entity. You can't go, okay, what's the story here? How can this best be put into a visual format? It does actually sometimes need another eye on it, another hand. And screenwriters are. I mean, I know some really, really brilliant screenwriters who adapt books.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a particular skill, and not everybody has it.
But you said that, you've been not sitting in this story, but the story's been with you for a long time,
Yeah.
while you've been working on other things. So why was this story always going to be your first novel? Because that's quite a big decision to make, I think.
It kind of, I mean, to some extent, like, as I say, I started thinking about it when I was on the MLit, which was
Right.
2010, right? 2020, 2011. And I did an initial, I think I had about 20,000 words of it.
Okay.
But then I did the Masters in Television Fiction Writing. I went straight onto that after the MLit, and that was what started me in screenplaying. And when I came off that, I wrote a play. So I was like really scattered in terms of what I was working towards. I was like obviously developing my skills as a writer.
Sure.
But it meant that the book got put aside for quite a long time. I didn't go back to it until probably about 2016, about 5 years later. And when I picked it up, that's when I started like properly starting to work on it. And I'd signed with an agent by then.
Right.
So she sort of gave me a deadline. And I got it up to 60 something thousand. And then again, I didn't put it aside exactly. It was one of those stories. It was at the back. I always do it at the back of my head, So I was working on different, and by then I was starting to write. I was starting to write for River City, and I think I got it to. By 2018, I'd got it to round about 80,000 words, but again I put it aside, and my agent was sending it out to different people at that point, but then the COVID got in the way. She was going to take it to Frankfurt, and Frankfurt got cancelled. So again, I put it aside. I thought this is never going to work,
Right.
But then I started talking to Stephen about it at Into, and he was interested in the idea. So I sent him what I had, and he then helped me to work on it to get it to where it is now, and what you've got in your hands. That's
So how did you find the process of obviously the writing went over a period of time, but the whole thing of writing a novel, getting it published, all of that, how have you found that experience?
Exciting, because as an actor particularly, and a screenwriter, and even as a playwright, your work's ephemeral. Okay, it might be captured on film or whatever, but a play particularly, one performance is one performance. It's different every time, so you can't capture it. You don't have something in your hands. Whereas with a book, once it's there, that's it. You've got it in your hand.
Absolutely.
It's an actual thing. It's a bit like, I mean, I don't have any kids, but I imagine it's a little bit like having a baby. Here's something you made. It's real. It exists in 3D.
Yeah.
Which in all the other stuff I do, it's not that. It's not 3D.
Yeah, you're almost on to the next performance or
the
next episode or whatever it might be.
So it's out there, and you can, particularly now, you can watch it again.
Yeah.
But it's not a physical artifact, and a book is. And I mean, I'm a very keen reader myself. Always have been. I grew up in a family where we all read. So to some extent, this is something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
My mum and dad, who are not with us anymore, always wanted me to write a book. That's what they wanted me to do. Because when I was a kid, that's what I did. I won essay prizes and composition prizes and things like that. And they always thought that's what I would do. So becoming an actor was a much dafter thing to do in their eyes.
So I'm trying to get the timeline then. Did acting come first?
But not until I was in my 30s, actually,
Right.
because I didn't think it was sensible. You know,
Yeah.
I come from a very standard working class background. You go out there and you work, you know,
Yeah.
you earn money. But I got to my 30s and I still wanted to do it. And I had a flatmate at that point who had been an actor and was now being a writer, and she just decided that's what she was going to do.
Yeah.
And within 6 months, she had a place on Malcolm Bradbury's course at East Anglia,
Wow.
and I just thought this is amazing. And she said, "Well, why don't? What would you do?" Well, I'll tell you. She asked me this question. It's a two-part question. And she said, right, you have to answer honestly. And I said, right, okay. So she said, the first part of the question is, she said, go to the doctor, and the doctor tells you you've got exactly 1 year to live. You won't be ill. You're not going to like
Right. Okay.
gradually decline. You'll just live your life, and then a year from today, you're going to drop down dead. So what are you going to do with a year? And I said, oh, well, you know, at that time I was working at Glasgow University as an academic administrator. I said, oh, well, you know, I would go on a cruise, and I'd do this and I'd do that. And then I said, no, actually, no. You know what I would do? I would liquidate all my assets, and I'd take all that money and I'd put on a play and I would star in it. And she said, right, okay. She said, so the second part of the question is, if that is what you would do if you only had a year to live, why are you not doing it? And I started to say, well, because I don't only have a, oh. And it was about seize the day, you know, do what you want to do while you can do it, you know. So I applied to drama school in Guildford, actually, in England, because at that time, you know, I was 34, I think, 33, 34. And I thought, well, I don't want to do a 3-year course, you know. And you couldn't do a year's postgrad then in Scotland. It didn't exist. You can now, but you couldn't then. And so I went to Guildford for a year and did a postgrad in drama. And then, to some extent, I needed to do that so that I could legitimately call myself an actor. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't just giving up my work and deciding I was an actor. I was going to train. So I, you know, like after that, I was working as an actor. I mean, that was in the 90s. So, I mean, you'll know this as well as I do. Like, it was a much more open landscape then. Everybody, it basically was like, let's just do the playwright here, you know. And there were loads of wee tiny companies like Clyde Unity, and I mean, like not so tiny Borders. God, that's terrible. What's just gone out of my head? The company in Ayrshire starts with Borders. Never mind. There were loads and loads. 784 was touring in all over Scotland. There were loads of wee tiny touring companies, and somebody would just put a company together and say, right, we're going to do this play, and everybody just did it, you know. And obviously we were all like, you know, don't tell the DSS, but you know, we were all claiming the dough at the same, you know.
You're absolutely right. I was in Glasgow at that time, and you could go almost every other night to a different space and see a different bit of theatre being put on. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of writing different things, do you approach when you sit down to write and you say, right, today I'm going to work on the novel? Is it different from if you're sitting down to write a screenplay or a bit of theatre?
It depends. Like, I mean, most of my screenwriting's been for River City, so that's you have a specific brief you're writing to.
Okay.
You know, so you're not making up the characters or the stories. You get given what's called a story doc, which delineates who's in each episode and the basic storylines, and you flesh it out. You put the flesh on the bones. Playwriting, that starts from you usually, unless you're commissioned specifically to write something. At the moment, I've got a play just about to be to open at the end of the month with a company called In Cahoots.
Right.
And they work with people who are in addiction recovery. And this is the second play I've written for them. And I said to them, well, what do you want to play about? And they send you 50 things that you might write a play about, you know. So then you have a chat with them about, well, how about this, how about that? So this one was about, they decided they wanted a play about a society where people aren't allowed to laugh. So that was the brief, right? A play about a society where people aren't allowed to laugh. And, you know, it's very resonant right now.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
In fact, it hasn't been absolutely finalised. Some of it wasn't finalised until the last week or two, because there's a particular character in it that makes pronouncements, and I thought, well, I'm just going to leave it open because these guys are going to be making pronouncements right up to the wire, and I want to be able to reflect that in the play. So that's writing to order, if you like, although I had a lot of freedom in how I interpreted that. But other plays that I've written, it's just been me deciding I'm going to write a play about this. And the novel, you're writing the story you want to write. So there's more freedom there. Eventually, of course, it gets to the stage where you're with an editor or a publisher or an agent, and then you're working with people. But so screenwriting, you're writing to order usually, unless you're Jed Mercurio or who like I was just reading about Lisa, what's her second name, who wrote Dairy Girls.
Yeah, she's got a new bit of telly coming
out, so she decides what that story is, because once you're at that level, television companies are coming to you and going, got anything? Sally Wainwright, hello, got anything good, Sally? Whereas for me, like I've got various projects of my own on the go as a screenwriter, but they're with like a producer or with an indie, and you just hope that you're going to strike a note that they go, oh yeah, that sounds interesting, and we'll commission you to write it. But even then, you'll get a lot of input from the production company, changing things as you go along. Whereas with a novel, you don't usually get that until you've got the written, the finished piece.
And was this the first time working with an editor in any of your work?
With an editor in the novel,
How did you find that process?
Invaluable, because you get to a stage where, we might get cat bombed in a minute.
Okay, that's okay. Cat friendly on this podcast.
Yeah, good. She's like, she gets interested when she can hear people talking, and she knows I'm not talking to her. So there's a chance we might get a walk past. I will try not to let her show you her bum. It's a great compliment she does, of course. So what we were just saying there with the yes, invaluable, because you get to a stage where you can't see the wood for the trees, and I knew there were baggy moments in the book and bits that I'd overwritten or underwritten, and I needed another eye on it, basically, because I knew it needed sorted, but I didn't know how to sort it.
Right. And in Original Sins, I mean, you touch on some difficult subjects. Was it difficult to write about them?
Sometimes, yes. And I did wonder, without any spoilers, there are moments where women are put in a difficult position.
Yeah. And
I did worry that I might be just like writing tropes,
Okay.
But I hope I have avoided doing that by centering it in Joanne, in her experience and her understanding of it. And she's a difficult person, she's an unreliable narrator at times, because the story set now is told in the first person by her. So we only know what she knows. And
you're learning as she learns, which is one of the great things about the novel. And I would say it's a determination. There's a determination that kind of runs through her, which rubs the back of other people.
Yes.
Rubs people up the wrong way.
She's not. She's aware that she's spiky.
Yeah.
But sometimes she doesn't care. She just thinks that, deal with it, kind of thing. But she also has to deal with difficult stuff herself, and she has, like long, hard nights of the soul sometimes. Where she's near to giving up because it's too.
When you're writing characters, certainly in the novel, do they surprise you? Yes. It's so interesting. As someone who reads rather than writes, I always think, well, you must know where it's going, but no, they do.
Yeah. And I can remember sitting in a library once. I think it might be in the university library. I can't remember. It might be in the Mitchell. And Joanne just suddenly went off and did something that I was not expecting her to do. And in fact, the whole thing, there's a whole section set in Butte. And when she decided to do that, I didn't know she was going to do that. you know.
But
And
you know that rings so true for me reading it because, again, we'll avoid spoilers, but as the novel comes to a conclusion, the tension is almost unbearable. And I wondered if you felt that when you were writing it.
yeah, yeah. I find actually when like my friends told me this when I'm like she's seen me working and she says when you're doing this and then you hit the keyboard and then do this again. Um, and in fact, she reminded me the other day that originally there were two different endings to the novel.
That's one of my questions. Was it always going to end the way it does? How that's fascinating. So I guess why did you plump for the ending you did? You just thought that was the better.
I tested it with different readers, and asked them and even then when I sent it to Stephen,
Yeah.
it it had a slightly different tone at the end, and I think he sent it out to 5 readers, and 3 of them came back and said, I'm not absolutely sure that's how I would want it to end. So I looked at it again, and I thought, yeah, they're right. Yeah, so I changed it slightly,
So
tweaked it.
things like that and asking other people's opinion and all that. I'm interested that you went through an MLit. Does that help give you these kind of bits of advice? Is it really helpful?
Oh yes, and before I did the MLit, I'd done an OU course in creative writing, and we learned how to crit on that. I mean, it was all online, but
Yeah.
we would do workshops, and well, there were a couple of in person, but most of it was online. And what you had to do was one writer would submit something, and everybody else critiqued it. And they were quite. It was a really good tutor I had, and she would say, "No, don't don't say yes, I like it without saying why."
Yeah.
You know, and don't just say that doesn't work. What you've got to do is give the writer something to work with. You know,
Yeah.
so when I came to them, like, it was terrifying the first couple of weeks
Yeah.
because at the time Professor Michael Schmidt was in the chair.
Right.
He ran the course, and he was amazing. I said he's an amazing poet, but he doesn't cut you any slack.
Yeah.
You've got to hit the ground running, and if you can't take it, too bad. And I was actually on tour for the first couple of weeks of the course, and it was like I did it part time, did it over 2 years, and I missed the first workshop. I mean, like, I had permission to do it, but I'd read it and I'd submitted my crit in writing. And when I heard how he'd been in the workshop, he went through them like a dose of salts. Like, he was going,
Wow.
no, not acceptable, not acceptable. And I was like, thank God I wasn't there. So I learned by, by not being there, how not to be. So by the time I went on to the first workshop, which was week 3 in the course, I kind of knew what he was looking for. And I think I submitted my first piece and it was every week. You had to do it every week. So 3 writers every week submitted something, and we all had to read them and we all had to critically analyse. So, sorry, long answer to a short question. Yes, being critiqued is
Yes.
really, really helpful. I mean, it's dual edged. I think critiquing other people's work teaches you so much about your own.
Yeah.
Learning to look at something analytically, not in a hard way, just thinking, right, why does that work? Why does that not work? And without giving fixes, without saying, I think you should do this or I think you should do that, because that's not what good critique is. Good critique is, okay, why have you made that choice? Right, okay, what it's doing for me is this. Is
Yeah.
that what you wanted it to do?
Yeah.
So it's not a case of, no, I don't like that, it's too sentimental or whatever. It's more like, this is how it reads. Is that what you want? You know.
I think, a lot of people, there's this idea of the novelist who sits alone in the room with previously a pen, but now, a
Yeah, your
iPad, whatever
laptop.
it might be. But actually, increasingly, I talk to people that have either done courses or go to writing groups or go to writing workshops. Well, I mean, I did a nighttime creative writing course many, many, many years ago, but that was the central part of it. It was actually the feedback and learning from other people. I can still remember things that were said then, and you take them with you. And it seems to be increasingly important. And in other arts as well. I speak to musicians now, and they go to workshops, songwriting workshops. I'm guessing you do your own workshops, don't you?
Yes. I teach on the Masters in Television Fiction Writing, and I run creative writing workshops in different places. Yeah.
So I think all that kind of feedback, it seems to be a really important part of it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be careful.
Yes.
Sometimes people have agendas, and I always say when someone asks me to critique a story or something, I say to them, right, here, it's subjective. This is what I think, this is what I feel. And as a teacher, there are certain things that I will say, but I always say to people, take what's useful and dump the rest. This is not gospel. What you're trying to do is to help someone shape it, or point out where there might be like structural issues, or an issue with tense or something like that. Someone's wandering between, like new writers often do this. They'll wander between past and present without realizing that they're doing it. Or something's too passive in the writing or something like that rather than active. But again, everybody has their own style, and they have to find their own style. They have to find their own voice, and you can't impose yours on them. They're not sitting at your feet, learning how to write. It's more a case of, well, there are all these possible routes you can go down. You choose yours. You do you. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is, absolutely. And now, if this touches on a spoiler, tell me and I will take it out. But you've got, Joanne's the narrator,
yes.
Going through, but then in part 2, you bring in another voice.
Yes.
Now, was that difficult to write? Or how did you approach writing this other voice?
Well, if it's James you're talking about, yes. Like I said, he started talking to me, and it was, but it was kind of initially, well, you'll see it in the novel, his sections where he talks directly, they're in the second person.
Yeah. I know.
And that was a late decision. That's a very late decision.
Yeah, it's a very good decision, because it really gives it a power, I think, that it stands out. They stand out.
It's very odd. It's a hard one to use, and people don't use it very often because it's weird. It's discombobulating, basically. But I mean, I'm just going to do it now. You use it all the time in speech. Yeah. You say, you use you. Yeah. You say such and such. That's second person, but it's not often used in writing. So it was a specific decision, right, almost at the last minute, to switch it into second person, because it was always in third person before. James always said he thinks this. James's voice was always he thinks this and he does that. And I don't know, like, again, it's a distancing thing, because he is like a distanced character. Yeah,
and I think it gives that tension I was talking about. I think it lends to that. It lends to the kind of sense of almost unease that's going on, as the book goes on. I'll say no more than that.
I know that's the aim. It's to make it uneasy,
Now, I want to say there's a book launch at the Tron Theatre in Glasgow on the 6th of March with fellow writer Chris Dolan, another terrific writer. Yeah. Are you looking forward to that?
I am, with trepidation, because it's not my usual bag. Like I'm a performer.
I was going to ask, are you more comfortable in a role rather than being Linda?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you probably have seen it before. You watch a play, and maybe if there's a collection for something at the end and they want you to chuck it in the bucket, one of the actors will have to stand up as themselves and say, okay, guys, thanks very much. They stop the applause and go, right, we're making a collection for, I don't know, the Trussell Trust or something like that at the end of the... Everybody fights not to have to do it.
Yeah, okay.
Because you really don't want to you don't want to stand up and talk as you. And even when I'm doing like teaching or presenting or something like that, I'm doing it in a persona. Usually, I play the role of someone who knows what she's talking about. Even if I don't, which is something, you're hiding behind it a little bit, only to a certain extent. It's not a complete role. But yes, actually being interviewed on a stage about the book will be a little bit trepidatious for me. But Chris is a really good friend.
Right.
And
That always helps. That always
yes,
helps.
it always helps a bit, doesn't it? Yeah. And he was one of my tutors on the MATV.
Right.
Originally, he was one of the, well, he and Anne-Marie de Mambrel set the whole course up. And when I did the masters at Cali, he was one of the main teachers. So that's I knew him before that, but that's when I got to know him really well, and we've kept up as friends since then.
Well, I would say there are tickets available for that now if anybody's wanting to go, but I believe they're going quite quickly.
Apparently they are, yes. And I haven't. I only told like friends and family yesterday, and I said to them, "This will go out widely tomorrow." So
Get in there quick.
yeah, yeah.
It seems talking to you that everything you do has storytelling at its heart. That that's important. I mean, I can guess how important do you feel storytelling is to kind of all of us?
I think it's like it's atavistic. We all like to be told stories, don't we? From the days behind the campfire or in the cave,
Yeah.
And it's about all of the creative arts. Doesn't matter which ones they are. Like from like performative arts to painting, music. It's all about the human condition. I think we're all talking to each other about what it's like to be human. As an actor, if I'm playing a character, what I hope I'm doing is trying to tell a truth about how it is to be this kind of person, how it is to be a mother who kills her children, if you're doing Medea, how it is to be a dairy girl, whatever, what you want the audience, whether it's a reader or a listener, to do is to believe. Is to believe that these people are who they say they are, and that that they're telling you how it feels to be that person. So yes, and I think it's a thing humans have been doing since the beginning, explaining ourselves to ourselves.
Yeah, it seems to me increasingly people don't want people telling stories. They don't want people sharing ideas or anything like that because they might be seen as, against what, people stand for. It increasingly seems to be being shut down.
I think that I think it will also the urge to tell stories will always be with us, though. I think
Absolutely.
and it's not even if we all had to go underground, we would.
Yeah,
We'd
absolutely
be
right.
sharing stories secretly.
And again, go back to original sins, that idea when you're reading Joanne's story, you cannot help but think, how would I do this? How would I react? What if I was in that situation? What would my questions be? Have I been in that situation? It's a novel which constantly asks the reader to ask questions themselves, I think.
I hope it does. I mean, it's the same with my plays. I don't answer questions. I ask them.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's and that Joanne does stuff and doesn't do stuff that other people might do to resolve situations, and I think we have to let her be. We have to let her be that
Yeah.
like conflicted person that doesn't necessarily do the right thing.
Oh, there were plenty of times. Yeah, I mean, you were mimicking biting your nails. I was biting my nails, going, "Don't do that," or "Why have you done that?" Or make a different decision. But it's true
Yes.
to her. It's true to who she is. The
Yeah.
character that you've created. That's exactly how they would kind of do things. And who inspires you as a writer? Do you have people that write from the? You mentioned you were a keen reader, so I wonder.
Steinbeck's my
Right.
favorite author. And my favourite novel of his is East of Eden, which not everybody likes, but I think it's amazing because it's and he did a journal of the novel when he was writing it. And he spent every morning he'd sit down with yellow legal paper and pencils and write a letter to his agent talking about the what he was wanting to do with the book today and some stuff about his life and stuff like that. And what he wanted to do with East of Eden was interrogate whether there's such a thing as natural evil. Are people just evil, or are they not? Is it something that's imposed upon them from their upbringing? And is it nature or nurture? And to some extent, that's what I'm exploring with
Yeah.
original. Not nearly as brilliantly as Steinbeck,
Well,
but
Original Sins is an apt title for it, and after you explaining that influence, I can feel
uh-huh.
that.
And that's why the title is the title. I think the title was there right from the start, and I think that because it struck me right. Like I mean, I read, you know, it used to be eons ago, and someone gave me the journal of the novel because I was talking about it, and it was just like, oh my god, this guy's a genius, you know. And who else do I like? I like Margaret Atwood. You know, again, dystopian stuff, and you know, like central female characters and things like that are not necessarily bastions of good.
Yeah.
You know? There's too many. I could go over and read through the bookshelf. I love I like crime thrillers, like writers. Again, they're not just crime thrillers, like Louise Welsh, Zoe Strachan. Well, she's not crime, but Denise Miner, people like that. You know,
fantastic. We had Louise on the podcast just a couple ago talking about her
did you?
novel as well, and she's just so inspirational in all sorts of ways. And in terms of your own plans, have you plans for a future novel, or is it too early to say?
I have a couple of possibilities in my head. One, I don't know whether it's a novel or a screenplay yet, and it definitely is a crime thriller. And the other one is completely different. It's kind of like I don't know how to describe it. It's about a young woman who starts to grow a pair of wings, and she discovers that she's been the result of an experiment that was undertaken 21 years ago, and the people who did the experiment are now coming looking for her.
Well, when you're back on talking about that, I look forward to the answer to what's the inspiration for that one. Linda, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been a real pleasure.
It's been lovely to talk to you too, Ali. Thank you so much for having me on, you know, and I will, and now that I've discovered you, of course, I'll be listening to the podcast every week, you know.
Oh, that's fantastic to know. I always like a new listener. I really did love Original Sins. I hope people go out and buy it and read it and enjoy it as much as I did.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different.